Welcome back to another edition of Dave Smith Unleashed, and make sure to like, follow, and subscribe on our YouTube page at the Dave Smith Unleashed Podcast, at the Dave Smith Unleashed Podcast. And love kicking it around with you guys in the comment section. Love having all of you subscribe. And you know what? If you want to know the next date, the time, the date, the guest, and the next time we're going to be on, the day and time, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dave Sports God, at Dave Sports God. So follow on YouTube at the Dave Smith Unleashed Podcast. Follow on Twitter at Dave Sports God. All right. I think most of you know from listening to me all these years, in all my years of local sports talk and national sports talk and doing this podcast, that I'm a big fan of tennis. Don't talk about it a lot. I stick mostly to the major sports, but I've always been a big fan of tennis, going back to the John McEnroe or Jimmy Connors days, Bjorn Borg, Chris Evert, all them. And I've continued to follow it through the years, and I've become a big fan of Novak Djokovic over the years, who I consider the GOAT. He's the Tom Brady. He's the Michael Jordan. He is the greatest tennis player of all time. And he just pulled off an absolutely incredible accomplishment at 38 years old, beating Jannik Sinner, who's the number 2 player in the world and 24 years old, and a guy who'd beaten him 5 times in a row. He beats him in a 5-set marathon, almost 5 hours, and makes the final against the number 1 player in the world, Carlos Alcaraz. So what he is being asked to do at 38.
Dave Smith Unleashed brought to you by MTS Transportations. And mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on your next shipment for all your shipping, trucking, and freight needs. There's only one business to call, and that's MTS Transportations at 800-640-6873. MTS Transportations, 800-640-6873.
Was to beat the number 2 player in the world and then the number 1 player in the world, both 15 years younger than him, within a span of 48 hours. Almost impossible. Not enough recovery time for a guy, for an advanced, that's an advanced age for a tennis player at 38. And I contend here that tennis is much harder to be successful at 38 years old than the NFL and then in the NBA. Now you're saying to yourself, Dave Smith, you're an idiot. In the NFL, you've got 350-pound men coming at you trying to take your head off. How is tennis easier? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they've changed the rules of the National Football League. Look at Tom Brady played effectively till he was 45 years old and won a Super Bowl when he was 43. Aaron Rodgers is going to be 43 next year if he decides to come back, and he was pretty good this year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. With the rule changes in the NFL, we're going to see a lot of quarterbacks playing effectively into their 40s. I'm sure Joe Montana and Dan Marino and John Elway could have played into their 40s with the rules they have now, where they're basically playing flag football out there and you can't hit the quarterback, and you can't hit receivers coming over the middle anymore. I think we're going to see receivers. Maybe Jerry Rice could probably still be playing at 60 right now if he wanted to, if you're not allowed to hit him when he comes over the middle with the new rules of the National Football League. So I think the NFL and the NBA, it's easier to be effective at 38 than it is in tennis. Yes, in tennis, there's no timeouts. You can't call in a substitute and say, I need a break here, and bring in another player to sub in for you during a match. You can't bring in another player, to play defense and only play half the match like in football, where players don't play offense and defense anymore. They play half a game. You can't depend on your teammates to come through for you. And in the NBA, these guys, there's load management now. Nobody's playing more than 36 minutes a game. And with the improvements in travel in the NBA, with the first-class travel and the 5-star hotels and the masseuses and the chefs going on the road with them, it's a lot easier to be LeBron and play till you're 41 these days. Tennis, not so easy, because it is a 5-hour grind in a 5-set match against a good player. And like I said, no subs. You can't come out on defense. There's no teammates to help you. No timeouts. What Novak accomplished here, to me, it's more impressive than Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl at 43, because he was playing under the new rules where you can't hit the quarterbacks anymore. So now you look at the career accomplishment of Novak. He's still stuck at 24 majors because he lost in 4 sets to Carlos Alcaraz in the final, but still, just getting there was a tremendous accomplishment. He's one ahead of Serena Williams, who won 23. He's tied with Margaret Court, who won 24. He's 2 ahead of Rafael Nadal, and I think I've always been of the belief you've got to separate the men's and the women's records. He's not tied with Margaret Court. Margaret Court has the women's record. Novak has the men's record. And he's 2 ahead of Rafael Nadal at 22. But you can make one hell of a good case that he could have 25 now, 26. I say he could have 27 instead of the current 24. And why is that? Well, because I think he got royally screwed over 3 times by the U.S. Open Rules Committee and during the COVID vaccine nonsense back around 4 or 5 years ago. Now, let's think of the first one. Remember in 2020, Novak's playing at the U.S. Open. He's favored to win that year because he was the best player in the world. He misses an easy shot. He gets frustrated. The ball bounces in front of him. He smacks the ball with his racket toward the back wall because he was frustrated. He missed an easy shot. And bad luck, the ball hit a lineswoman back there. Because he hit it hard. I think he hit her on the shoulder. And he said, his reaction at the time, he said, oh my God, he went running back there. He apologized profusely. He went down to one knee to make sure she was okay. He obviously didn't do it intentionally. Yes, he hit the ball to the back wall. Yes, he should have been penalized. I said, take a point away, take a game away. But with no warning, they disqualified him from the entire freaking tournament. He had to go home, and he was favored to win that year. So if he wins in 2020, where they unjustly disqualified him for hitting that lineswoman, now he's up to 25. But the biggest 2 screw jobs where he got completely screwed over was the 2022 Australian Open or the 2022 U.S. Open. Now, let's talk about the Australian in 22. That's during the COVID madness, the COVID mayhem, the COVID overreactions. He'd already had COVID twice, so he had natural immunity. He decided as a personal choice he wasn't going to get the vax. And again, whatever happened to my body, my choice? They got that kind of way during COVID. That kind of went away during COVID, didn't it? But he said, it's my body. I decide what I put into it. I'm not comfortable. I've done a lot of research. I'm not comfortable putting that vax in my body. I'm not going to do it. So he contacted the authorities in Australia and said, I'm going to show up there unvaxxed. I'd like a waiver to play. He gets the word back, you're fine. It went to the Australian courts. The courts ruled that he got a waiver and he was allowed to play. So then he gets on a plane, he flies all the way over there, and once he lands, he's stopped at the airport by the authorities. And they said, well, yes, you were cleared to play by the courts, but this just went to a higher court, and they've ruled that you can't play and you're not allowed to be in the country since you're unvaxxed. So they put him in handcuffs and took him to a detention center. And he's sitting there sleeping on a cot every night like a prisoner. And he appealed, and it finally, right before the tournament, went up to the highest court again, and they denied his appeal, and they threw him out of the country. So he was heavily favored that year. He's won 10 Australian Opens. That's been his best tournament over the years. It's 99% certainty he would have won that year in 2022. He was still in his prime. So that gets him to... Now, if he would have won the Open in 2020, when they disqualified him for hitting that lineswoman, that's 25. He would have won here, that's 26. And again, he was favored in 2020 when he got disqualified for hitting the lineswoman. He was heavily favored for the Australian in 2022 when he was not allowed to play. And then later that year, in September of 2022, the U.S. Open denied him the chance to play. Well, unless you get the vax, you cannot play. And he appealed again. He went to court. He said, listen, I've had it twice. I have natural immunity. I'm not a threat to anybody. And of course, he was correct. So you're telling me the healthiest, most fit human being in the world, Novak Djokovic, who has natural immunity, wait, you think he's going to kill everybody in the stadium if you allow him to play? It's complete nonsense. And looking back now, he was right. The overreaction. They told us that you couldn't get the vaccine, that you couldn't get COVID if you got the vaccine. That turned out to be a lie. They told us, well, if you wear a mask, you're safe from getting COVID. That turned out to be a lie. And now the medical authorities, looking back now, they're all saying that they were wrong. But a lot of good that does him. That cost him 2 majors and a third one when he hit the last person in 2020. Again, he was the healthiest, fittest man in the world. Natural immunity. They want us to believe everybody in Australia was going to die if they allowed him in the country. He was going to kill everybody like a mass serial killer. You got to be kidding. It was such nonsense. And he had every right not to get the vax. He said, my body, my choice. I've had it twice. I have natural immunity. He had medical records that confirmed he had natural immunity, and he wasn't a threat to anybody, and they didn't care. And again, they've admitted they were wrong now that we look back. Remember, Dr. Fetzer, if you wear a mask, you can't get COVID. That was a lie. If you get the vax, you can't get COVID. It turned out people who got vaxxed had a higher chance of getting COVID. The whole thing was bullshit. So that's why I say Novak could, I say he would have won the U.S. Open. Now, nothing's guaranteed. Who knows? I think there was a good chance he would have won the U.S. Open in 2020 when he was qualified. I think it's 99% certain he would have won the Australian in 2022. He was heavily favored, and he's won 10 of them. He was almost unbeatable in the Australian when he was in his prime. And then 2022, later that same year, heavily favored to win the U.S. Open. I say he would have won all three of those. The two he wasn't allowed to play and the one where he was DQ'd. So that puts him at 27. So yes, 24 is a great accomplishment. 27 is even better. And I don't think he's going to win another one at 38. I think this was his best chance, the Australian final, because Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz are so dominant right now. And there's a lot of other good young players coming up. He's not going to get any better at 39 and 40 than he is now. So, Father Time's going to keep catching up to him. It's going to be harder to recover. The young guys are getting better and better. I think this is his best chance. I think he's going to retire. I don't think he's going to retire from the sport, but I think when he does retire, it's going to be 24. But, as James Blake said the other night during the broadcast, question the all-time greats at your peril. The people who didn't think he could beat Jannik Sinner, and they were so shocked afterwards. So what do you think? Go to the YouTube page at The Dave Smith Unleashed Podcast, at The Dave Smith Unleashed Podcast. Give me your comments. How does Novak's accomplishment compare? I think you're probably going to think I'm crazy. I think it's a better accomplishment than Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl at 43 with the rules we have in the NFL now. Playing tennis is a lot more difficult at 38, physically, on your body. Do you think that's one of the all-time great accomplishments what he did? And do you think it was as grossly unfair as I do that he was DQ'd in 2020? And even worse, not allowed to play over the ridiculous COVID mandates that we look back now and know that they were bullshit. The most fit man in the world. The healthiest man in the world. Natural immunity. He'd already had COVID twice. Yeah, but you can't play, Novak, because it goes against the narrative. You can't save it. You don't want to take the COVID vaccine. We can't allow you to play. To me, he's been screwed out of 3 majors now. Novak, in my opinion, I'm going to say it from now on. He's got 27. Whenever I talk about Novak, I'm going to say he's got 27, not 24. And you say the record books, he has 24. I don't give a shit about the record books. All that matters is what I think. And I say he has 27. Let me know what you think. That does it for me here. Make sure to go to the YouTube page and follow me at The Dave Smith Podcast, and follow me on Twitter at Dave Sportscott. And we'll talk to you next time right here on Dave Smith Unleashed.